Welcome to my presentation today, which talks about the 4 decision determinants concerning the selection of an appropriate international market entry strategy within the framework of market entry strategies. My name is Mario Blovik, and you will find the content in more detail to read in Chapter 3 of the book Market Entry Strategies, Internationalization Theories, Concepts and Cases. So at the end of this session, we should be able to select the most suitable market entry strategy out of the portfolio of contractual modes, cooperative modes, and foreign direct investment, depending on the 4 strategic decision determinants, such as the degree of hierarchical control, market entry rapidity, proximity to the market, and the financial risk. We follow a 2-step decision process approach towards an international market entry. So first of all, we will talk about setting the strategic priorities in terms of the degree of hierarchical control, market entry rapidity, proximity to the market, and the financial risk. And then as a second step, we will discuss recommendations in terms of the selection of the appropriate market entry mode, concerning contractual modes, cooperation, which means joint ventures and alliances, and foreign direct investment. This figure is designed in order to illustrate these 3 groups: contracting, cooperation, and foreign direct investment, in terms of the degree of hierarchical control, which can be low or high or medium in the middle, proximity to the market, which can be low, high, medium in the middle, financial risk, low, high, and market entry rapidity, low, high. For example, export indicate a market entry mode of relatively low degree of hierarchical control. When the cargo is customs cleared at the port, for example, then the exporter doesn't have any access to the cargo. While in comparison, when we run our own production plant in the foreign target country, that means we take the entrepreneurial risk. We have to recruit employees and train employees. We have to pay our bills. We have to sell our products and services on our own. That comes along with a relatively high degree of hierarchical control, whereas at the same time, the financial risk is also high, where at the same time, the proximity to the market is high as well, because we do our operations directly in that foreign target market. So we have a direct customer and supplier contact. That's why we call this, we say that the proximity to the market is high, and which is in comparison not the case for contracting mode. As we had our example concerning exports, the importer is located in a foreign target country. So that's why when we conduct, for example, export activities after the cargo is customs cleared and delivered, we have no access. We remain in our exporting country, whereas the importer takes over the cargo in the foreign target country, which, however, comes along with the advantage that market entry rapidity in case of exports, for example, is relatively high in comparison to foreign direct investments. It takes time to build up manufacturing facilities, for example. That's why the market entry rapidity in case of foreign direct investments is relatively low. And in case of exports, the financial risk, fortunately, is also relatively low. We have a contract with the importer, and hopefully the importer will pay for the cargo. We have also other instruments to protect us from delayed or missing payments. For example, there's a letter of credit. So all in all, the financial risk is relatively low. Whereas when you run your own facilities abroad, the financial risk naturally is relatively high. And the contents here, there's a certain visual ranking visible. That means it ranges in case of contracting from here indirect export towards here turnkey contract, which means that, for example, the market entry rapidity in case of indirect export is higher than, for example, in case of turnkey contracts. And here we have the cooperation modes, hybrid modes also called. Here we tend to have a location rather in the middle, medium financial risk, medium market entry rapidity, medium hierarchical control, medium proximity to the market. And here we have the category titled foreign direct investment, comes along with high financial risk, high proximity to the market, high degree of hierarchical control, but a low degree of market entry rapidity. So let's talk about each category step by step in order to provide more details concerning the meaning of each strategic decision determinant. Okay, let's start with the degree of hierarchical control. The management should evaluate whether rather tight or loose control mechanisms concerning its operations in the foreign country are required. The decisional process should consider elementary issues such as the protection of knowledge or strategic importance of the target market. For example, concerning the pharmaceutical industries, pharmaceutical firms pay utmost attention on the protection of knowledge. So that's why pharmaceutical firms tend to favor own operations, in-house operations, than, for example, joint ventures. Joint ventures are more common, for example, in the electronics industries. So the degree of hierarchical control is related to the necessity to protect advanced technological or material knowledge. And if this is important for the management, such as in case for pharmaceutical firms, if yes, then tight control mechanisms, such as wholly owned subsidiaries, are recommended, while, for example, cooperative modes such as joint ventures are less appropriate in this case, if it is necessary to protect knowledge. Because joint ventures always come along with the risk that our joint venture partner learns from us, takes advantage of our joint venture activities, and that is then risky for us in order to maintain competitive advantages in the future. Another another point related to that question is the strategic market importance in terms of the volume and the growth rates. The more important the market for us, the more desirable it is to be in the market through own operations instead of serving the market from a distance, as for example through exports. The degree of hierarchical control is also influenced by foreign government regulation. So, for example, for the case foreign governments, it happens that foreign governments may favor market entry modes such as joint ventures. That means we have to consider to agree on a joint venture with a local partner. Otherwise, we do not have an opportunity to enter that market. And that joint venture then comes along with a medium hierarchical control because we share our knowledge, we share our equity and others with that joint venture partner. Uh, we may also think about the possibility that foreign government may have set up tariff or non-tariff barriers in terms of customs or in terms of quotas, bureaucratic efforts required, which belongs to the category of non-tariff barriers, and that may serve, that may indicate, that may serve as a signal for us not to launch export activities, but instead launching some foreign direct investment, for example, or to consider a license agreement, or to consider establishing a joint venture in the foreign target country. In all the cases, the environmental analysis of the target market is of vital importance. Environmental analysis considering the sociology, the politics, law, the legal requirements, for example, the economic framework, in order to figure out what is the most favorable market entry mode for us in terms of gaining a sustainable competitive advantage in the foreign target country. The degree of hierarchical control also depends on the firm's resources. For example, in terms of the financial resources, the choice of a market entry strategy naturally depends on the firm's resource assets. Building up and running a wholly owned sales and distribution network, which belongs to the category of foreign direct investment in the foreign market, comes naturally along with the advantage of higher hierarchical control because we own these operations. But on the other hand, it requires considerable resource cushions, considerable financial investments. And that is, of course, influencing our decision whether to go ahead, for example, through exports, licensing, original equipment manufacturing, or on the other hand, through foreign direct investments. Another category, the second category here discussed, deals with the market entry rapidity. That means here the question is whether we should enter that market fast or rather delayed. And this decision, the answer to that question is influenced, among others. For example, how important is our current business relationship with an important customer? That is also known as the phenomena of follow the customer phenomena. Let's assume we deliver here in our domestic markets to an important customer of us, and one day that customer offers us that they will establish some operations in a country abroad, and that the customer then asks us whether we are ready to follow and whether we are ready to set up our own operations abroad, because that customer wants to maintain close bilateral business relationships in order to make sure that our components arrive on time there at the customer. And then we have to think about whether to establish our own manufacturing plant. And that is then depending on our customer's movement. If the customer moves abroad within a relatively short time, then we have to follow. If the customer moves with a certain delay, then we also have some time to delay our market entry in that foreign target market. And another issue behind the phenomena of market entry rapidity comes along with the threat of technological or product substitution. In general, the shorter the product and technology life cycles, the more advisable it is for us, for the firm, to enter foreign markets simultaneously instead of an incremental country by country market entry, which is time consuming. If, however, we do business in markets in industries which indicate a rather long product life cycle, such as a pharmaceutical business, then we may think about often delayed market entry. Electronics industries, smartphones, for example, laptops, all these products indicate rather short-term product life cycles, and that's why in these industries, usually firms do not have time to wait too long with their market entry abroad. So that's why they prefer rather fast market entry modes such as exports, for example. And we also should think about first mover advantages. Technological leaders usually do not have time to wait, so fast entry in the global markets is desirable for firms offering technologically advanced products. It helps to develop a technological leadership positioning. Whereas on the other side, market latecomers, technological follower, there may technological latecomers who, for example, target cost leadership positionings, they may take advantage of delayed market entry, using the time to learn from the mistakes of the first movers and make things better than the first movers. So it depends on our own firm positioning in the market, whether we are a technological leader or technological follower, and this influences then our activities in terms of the market entry timing, whether to enter fastly or with a certain delay our foreign target markets. The market entry rapidity is also influenced by the intensity of industry competition. Competitive global markets may require fast market entry activities in order not to leave the foreign market shares to firms' competitors. And also the market entry rapidity is influenced by the investment volume. Large investments, for example, in product development or operations, naturally demand higher sales volumes, which can be realized through global market entries that help to reduce the return on investment time horizon. Monitoring also matters in terms of market entry rapidity. The management needs to evaluate the risk of losing control due to a hasty entry activity or poor partner selection in case of a joint venture, against the potential advantages and drawbacks related to a delayed market entry. Therefore, monitoring environmental analysis always is very important and should not be ignored by the management. The third category, the strategic category, is called proximity to the market. Here the management should evaluate whether its foreign engagements should be located rather close or distant to its customers. For example, if we run our own sales branches abroad, then we are close to our customers. In comparison, if we, for example, launch a franchise concept, we stay at home, we are the franchisor, and the franchisees operate in the foreign target countries, so franchisees are close to the customers. And this decision concerning the proximity to the market is influenced by, for example, the firm's products and services. Standardized products and services favor contractual market entry modes such as exports or franchising, and differentiated products and services in the target market in terms of product features, differentiating design expectations of the customer and service expectations often require a local presence of the firm, for example, through own sales branches. And particularly in markets where customers' behavior and attitudes are difficult to evaluate from a distance, that means from our home market, then the firm may consider most possibly proximity. That means being as close as possible to the customers abroad. Of course, that is also influenced by the strategic importance of the foreign market. Attractive forecasts regarding these foreign target markets in terms of the market volumes and growth rates recommend a local presence for us instead of serving the market from a distance. Also, logistics influence the decision whether to serve these foreign markets from a distance or whether to stay close to be locally present. Flexible order management, transportation lead times, and logistics costs influence the firm's market entry mode decision. For example, heavy and bulky products may favor local assembly activities in the foreign market because in this case we save considerable transportation and logistics costs. We also may think about the value of reputation. A firm may wish to build up a local brand in the foreign market, which helps to attract local customers, particularly in markets where customers favor domestic companies and domestic brands. The management may decide to launch its own operations locally in the foreign target market in order to develop a local image. So also the desire to build up a local reputation influences the decision whether to stay, whether to act in the foreign target markets from directly or whether to serve these markets from a distance. Firms should also consider the role of the foreign government. If there are some trade barriers in terms of relatively high import taxes or non-tariff barriers in terms of quotas, then the management may consider to establish local assembly activities. And that is, for example, possible through the cooperation with a joint venture partner. The higher the import taxes in that target country, the less recommendable is to consider exports, for example. And the management may also consider whether there are investment incentives granted in the local market. For example, the US car maker Tesla decided to establish an car manufacturing activities in a small village near Berlin in Germany, and they will also receive considerable subsidies. And last but not least, there's a financial risk. So the management has to evaluate the firm's cash availability and debt to equity ratio. Market entry through foreign direct investment is naturally more costly than contractual market entry modes such as licensing. And therefore, firms with low debt to equity ratios and available financial cushions can better manage investment activities abroad, and therefore they are better prepared for market uncertainties, which happen always in course of time. And therefore, smaller firms and firms with less financial potentials should think twice, and these firms should or may favor lower risk market entry strategies such as contracting modes, export licensing, but they should think twice whether to launch their own operations, wholly owned subsidiaries in the foreign target market. And also the selection of the market entry strategy is also dependent on the firm's international business experience. The less experienced the management in international business, the higher the uncertainty, and the more recommendable it is to consider less risky market entry strategies such as indirect and direct export and licensing. And time goes by, the more experience the firm has, the more knowledge in terms of its international business, then more risky market entry strategies can be considered, as for example joint ventures or foreign direct investment activities. Also, the management should consider the time horizon of expected return on investment when evaluating the financial risk of its preferred market entry mode. The longer the time period needed for the investment to pay back, the higher the firm's uncertainty and the corresponding financial risk. Cooperative forms of market entry, such as joint ventures, may serve as an alternative to reduce the financial burden of the firm. And also, we have to consider the expected reactions of local competitors. Local competitors may reduce the average prices in their home market, hoping to create an entry barrier for foreign firms. And for that reason, cooperative forms of market entry, such as strategic alliances with local partners, may help to gain better access to information about local competitors' activities in the foreign target market. Let me sum up to here. Each foreign market entry mode has different implications related to the firm's degree of hierarchical control, the financial resources the management has to commit, its target market proximity, and the market entry rapidity. What we have discussed here are recommendations to let us become sensitive about opportunities and challenges of business expansion depending on the selected market entry mode. And these opportunities and challenges should be evaluated by the firm's management against or in light of the firm's internal resource strengths and weaknesses. Advantages and potential risks come along with each market entry mode, and the firm's management chooses its market entry mode depending on the firm's strategic priorities, hierarchical control, market entry rapidity, proximity to the market, and the financial risk. And after reviewing this, as here recently discussed within the step 1, then the step 2 should be followed. That means then we take the decision of the appropriated market entry strategy. And once again, let me repeat, we have contracting modes such as exports, licensing, franchising, original equipment manufacturing, turnkey contracts and management contracts. We have cooperation modes, joint ventures and strategic alliances, and we have foreign direct investments like greenfield investments, acquisitions, equity participation at the foreign firm, or mergers. And this leads us again to that the figure, as I have introduced this illustration at the beginning. So we have these three categories, and we as managers take the appropriate selection. And which market entry mode is suitable for us, depending on our environmental analysis and depending on our own resource strengths and weaknesses. And let me summarize in the following chart. We have a contracting mode called indirect export. That means export through a commissioner. And that strategy is recommended if we have almost no experience in international businesses. We manufacture rather standardized products with a rather simple after-sales service, but demand is promising. And exports are also recommendable if the company is confronted with rather saturated home markets. Potential strategic risks: in case of indirect export, we depend on the intermediator. We have to pay a commission fee. We have often divided loyalties of the commissioner. That means in many cases, the commissioner not only contracts us, it also happens that the commissioner works also together with our competitors, and in worst case, competitors may pay a higher commission, and then at least there's a potential risk that that intermediator then may favor our competitors' products. And exports are not recommendable related to countries which have installed relatively high trade barriers like import taxes or non-tariff barriers. And always exports come along with the risk of high transportation costs, and it is not recommendable, or tends to be more risky in case of bulky products. But the advantage is market entry rapidity in case of indirect export is relatively high, and the financial risk is relatively low. But rather disadvantages are that we serve these markets from a distance, proximity is relatively low, and since our products, our cargo is customs cleared, is shipped, is delivered, then we have no access to these components. It is then in the importer's hand. The direct export is almost, or indicates common characteristics with indirect export. Just the difference in between is that we skip the commissioner, but the strategy recommendations and the potential risks remain almost the same. And also the entry rapidity is high in case of direct exports. Hierarchical control is low. Financial risk as well as proximity to the market is also low. In case of licensing, which also belongs to contractual market entry modes, also the firm makes use of high market entry rapidity because that knowledge is sold against payment of royalties by the licensee. So that strategy is recommended in case of lack of financial or organizational resources of our firm. We just sell the knowledge or the trademark, but we do not need to establish our own manufacturing operations abroad. Therefore, We can also make use in industries which indicate a relatively fast technology and product life cycles. The shorter the technology life cycle, the higher the risk maybe that our knowledge is outdated, our technology, and that's why May is recommendable to serve our knowledge as fast as possible to licensees ready and willing to license our knowledge or trademark. And in comparison, foreign direct investment tends to be risky because in this case we have to set up our own operations abroad, which is not the case for licensing. In this case, we sell our knowledge, we sell our trademark rights, but the entrepreneurial risk remains at the licensee. However, licensee may damage our reputation, which serves as one potential strategic risk. That means if our knowledge is used in the wrong manner, that means which in worst case may harm the health of our customers, or if the licensee uses our trademark but assembles rather products indicating a low quality or offering a poor service, then that probably or for sure will come back to our own brand image. So that we as a licensor should be aware when considering that market entry mode. And there's always a risk of technology copy by the licensee. Yeah. When we sell that intellectual property, maybe the licensee will copy, will make light modifications, and then licensee will launch almost similar product in the market. And royalties may are lower than the value of our technology transfer. Everything is negotiable in between licensor and licensee. So that's why we should think about the value of our own knowledge, which is naturally not easy always to set the price for it. And when we when we license major part of our own operations, or let's say when we license instead of running our own operations, we have limited experience curve effects in-house because the product is manufactured at the licensee side, and that also comes along with limited economies of scale effects. And never ever forget licensee may become our competitor because a licensee learns through that relationship and makes its own research and development activities. Franchising and licensing also have many common characteristics. Also, franchising allows a fast market entry mode. It limits the financial, or is recommended if the franchisor has limited financial resources. The difference between franchise and licensing is that in case of franchising, the franchisor sells a proven business concept, not just the trademark or technological knowledge. As in case of licensing, it's an entire proven sales concept, and that two franchisees who take over the entrepreneurial risk. Franchisees usually also have to pay a startup fee to buy our proven business concept, and They pay monthly fees depending on the sales they do within our franchise concept, and that helps the franchisor launching its international markets with relatively limited financial resources, while at the same time the business concept is multiplied and administrative efforts, for example, are shared in between or among the franchisees. The more franchisees we have available, the higher the probability of realization of economies of scale effects due to that proven business concept. Nevertheless, franchisors should never ever forget franchisee may harm our reputation. We have that from time to time in fast food industries. There's one franchisee, for example, which doesn't meet the hygiene standards, and then suddenly there's a bad news in the media, which for sure harms our reputation. And there's always a risk of partners' disagreements over objectives and franchise fees. It's also not so easy for us to make the appropriate partner selection, and we also should question, in terms of our partner selection, whether the franchisee has the entrepreneurial capability to run our business in a manner that we are looking for in terms of quality, in terms of services, and the sustainable business. Original equipment manufacturing is applied mainly in manufacturing industries such as automotive, electronics. We can expand our capacities because part of our manufacturing activities then is done by our contract partner abroad, which limits our financial costs and reduces the operational costs. It also provides more flexibility in the order management, because if, for example, the sales is increasing of our product, then hopefully we can increase our order volume to our contract partner. There is no need to feed our own production lines. That means we can reduce our fixed costs, and instead we contract other firms, and that helps to be more flexible in terms of the order management. And that original equipment manufacturing mode also has some potential strategic risk, as all market entry modes. That means the more we give up, the more we shift to contract partners, the less involved we are in the operations and quality control. So we do not know what are state of the art, what are very recent developments, for example, related to that product in that market. In worst case, our contract partner may harm our reputation because of poor quality standards, but also poor working conditions, which will have a negative impact on our own reputation. And also there's a knowledge transfer always when considering original equipment manufacturing, because when we share knowledge, when we talk to our contract partner how to manufacture our product, then we naturally give up knowledge in terms of production know-how, quality know-how. In terms of these categories, such as entry rapidity. It is, we may call this a medium market entry rapidity because we have to search for a contract partner. Hierarchical control tends to be low to medium because the contract partner operates, makes the product. The financial risk is relatively low because the entrepreneurial risk is at the contract partner side, and proximity to the market tends to be medium. We run a business relationship with our contract partner. The contract partner is located in a foreign target country, but we also have permanent visits in order to make sure that the products and services are made according to our standards. But at the end of the day, we stay mainly at our home market, and operations are shared with our contract partner, so that's why the proximity to the market tends to be medium. Management contracts, which is, for example, very common in hotel business, all three categories tend to be medium. That strategy is recommended if there's a specified managerial or technological know-how available, and we are able to sell our services, including training and consultation. In case of management contracts, to a foreign partner abroad, which maintains the entrepreneurial, which has still the entrepreneurial risk. So that's why the financial risk is shared. The organization is our contract partner is responsible for its own firm organization, and that contract partner stays in that foreign market we just sent, for example, for a certain period of time, our experts to train, to consult, and that's why management contracts, all of them have in common, all of these market strategic decision determinants have in common that they are medium. But there's always a potential strategic risk. We foster a potential competitor. We should be aware. The more we train, the more we consult. We may have these are potential strategic risks. That doesn't mean that it always happens like this. So we should be aware that negotiations and fixing the fees may cause some discussion. We may realize also that there's an organizational misfit at our partner firm, and we may find that it is not so easy to find, or that we suffer from finding educated staff or suitable employees. We can train, we can consult, and these are the potential strategic risks when talking about management contracts. Turnkey contracts deal with larger investment activities, investment projects. That's why the entry rapidity is medium to low. Hierarchical control tends to be medium. The financial risk tends to be medium to high, and the proximity to the market tends to be medium to high as well. That strategy is recommended if project expertise is required in terms of a specific engineering know-how or complex technological process knowledge. And turnkey contracts always indicate a promising strategy because of promising opportunities in emerging or less developed countries. And that's why the risk tends to be medium to high, but the potential earnings, the potential profits tend to be also high. Potential risks come along with infrastructure challenges in terms of or related to the foreign target market, the political, legal, and economically framework, and we may also find or confronted with a lack of qualified personnel in the target country, and the turnkey projects tend to be complex, and that's why we may find an organizational misfit in between how we organize such turnkey operations and how our contract partner organizes such kind of activities. Okay, in case of an cooperative market entry mode, such as in strategic alliances, which usually target the exchange of information concerning client data, research and development, or concerning setting industrial standards, or making use of strengthening their competitive positioning. We find medium market entry rapidity. The hierarchical control tends to be low to medium because all strategic alliance partners remain legally independent. The financial risk is also accordingly low to medium, and the proximity to the market tends to be medium. We offer to our strategic partners our own distribution channels, for example, and our strategic partner then offers their own distribution channels in their local markets to us. So that's why, all in all, we call this medium. Partner selection is very crucial, and we should be aware of the risk that our knowledge is misused because of an opportunistic behavior. Our partner may damage our reputation because of poor working conditions, and if we have agreed on a partnership with them, then it may harm also our reputation easily as well. And that the so-called synergy effects are below expectation. That is, in many cases, the business reality, unfortunately, and this serves as another potential risk when considering international strategic alliances. The difference in between international strategic alliances and an international joint venture comes along with the fact that in case of an international joint venture, there's a third legally independent company established, which is not the case. So that's why it's not the case for strategic alliances. That's why the financial risk is higher than in case of strategic alliances, but lower than for the case of a foreign direct investment, because usually the financial risk, similar as the hierarchical control, entry rapidity, or similar as the hierarchical control, is shared with the joint venture partner, particularly in case of an equity joint venture. Finding an appropriate joint venture partner is not always easy, so that's why the entry rapidity tends to be medium and not fast for sure. And the proximity to the market can be also classified as medium because we make use of the, for example, of the capabilities, of the facilities of the joint venture partner in the foreign target country, whereas we stay at home or we jointly serve together with joint venture partners, other foreign markets. The strategy is recommended in order to bundle strategically resources, in order to launch, for example, a combined global market entry with our joint venture partner. Hopefully, we can share the risk and we make use of joint activities in terms of research and development, manufacturing, marketing, which hopefully leads to a faster market penetration. For example, in case of innovative products. But partner selection is so important, the right partner selection. There's always a risk of opportunistic behavior. We transfer our knowledge, but in worst case, our partner is not willing to transfer the knowledge required to gain competitive advantages. And there's also the risk of unclear ownership structures and decision power, and that the synergy effects remain below expectations. And we should not forget the fact that in many cases there's a joint venture established in between two firms concerning some value-added activities, and then at other stages of the value chain, these firms remain as competitors. And last but not least, we have the category of foreign direct investment. That is recommended when we have advanced experience in international business, when we target attractive markets. The volume should be as big as possible and ideally combined with high growth rates. Sometimes there is no other way to follow our competitors or customers, as explained at earlier stages of that presentation. And that is also foreign direct investment is recommended when we sell rather heavy and bulky products, or when we sell highly specialized products, very differentiated products and services in the foreign target country. And that is also recommendable to avoid trade barriers, which is always the case for export. And FDI, foreign direct investment, also makes use when we have, or when we can generate local cost advantages in the foreign target country compared to our home market. But there are always potential risk that, especially for those who have less experience in international business, then there's the risk that we underestimate the challenges related to unfamiliar environments and work ethics. We have to deal with different legal systems. We have to be aware of larger investment volumes to set up our own operations. That's why the financial risk is high. And also there's the risk that local firms do not want us to enter that market, and they may find ways to keep us out, to let us have some difficulties. And that's why the entry rapidity tends to be low. But when we are successful, then we are operating directly in the foreign target market. So we have the first-hand customer information, we have the first-hand supplier information, and we are able to talk to other stakeholders, and that helps us improving our competitive positioning. And also running our own operations provides us the advantage of hierarchical control, because we recruit our employees, we train them, we set the working standards, the ethical standards, we implement our own company culture, which is and huge advantage we should not underestimate. FDI is also recommended to make, if there is an opportunity to make use of tax incentives or subsidies. It is recommended if we want to build up our local brand reputation. And FDI is recommendable if we find better availability of necessary resources. It can be raw material, but it can be also knowledge, qualification of employees, and that is, it's in fact, we should not underestimate as well. There's another potential strategic risk that the protection of our property should be secured. The investment capital in the foreign target country should be safe, and that means that we also should consider, when evaluating the entry mode of foreign direct investment, whether we have in our target countries an appropriate availability of suppliers, for example. Suppliers should be as close to us, and the corresponding service providers, logistics firms, banks, but also universities training, educating students, which, for example, then have the knowledge which is required to make our products and services. So all in all, foreign direct investment indicates the highest organizational complex. These are very complex foreign market entry modes, and much more complex than, for example, export activities or license activities. There's a separate session available at YouTube, which talks about contractual market entry modes and cooperative market entry modes and foreign direct investment. So what we have discussed here in these tables should be understood as additional information to these sessions provided separately, which you find in addition at YouTube. And the major aim of this session is to make us sensitive for these 4 strategic decision determinants. And I highly recommend to you also to go through the other sessions, which are titled Market Entry Strategy, Contractual Market Entry Mode, and then there's another session titled Market Entry Strategy, Cooperative Market Entry Modes. And then there's a third session available titled Market Entry Strategies with a focus on foreign direct investment. If you go through these sessions, and if you go through this session, including these tables, then for sure you have best prerequisites to make use of that table in a most sufficient manner, and that hopefully will help you gaining competitive advantage in business, but also I hope it will help you doing your academic studies. So thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and all the best for you. Thank you and bye-bye.